How's everybody doing? Back again with another episode of Until I'm Famous. I'm glad to be back. It's been a beautiful, eventful week, so to say. Been very, very good. Well, yeah, it's been very, very good. We had we had like a, we had like a lot of good things happen. Well, not really good things, so to say. I mean, we had the UFC that went off on the weekend where they had like three champions and shit like that, which is crazy because we was like able to. I was like, I went to like a bar, like a local bar, just to go and like watch the fights. You know, I was real because I really wanted to see. I haven't seen UFC in a minute. I think the last UFC where I actually sit there and just actually sit there and watch the shit was like fucking when Connor got his ass beat. And he's lost so much. I still don't understand how. Like, I don't understand how Conor McGregor is a draw in the UFC sport when you have lost as much as him. He's lost, so much. One thing that we do notice about him though, he knows how to sell himself. It's like the difference between him and Floyd is like Floyd is like one of the best at selling himself, but Floyd won. Floyd didn't lose, and when Floyd cherry picked, he cherry picked the proper opponents. I think Conor McGregor been trying to cherry pick. He wants to cherry pick, but he can't. He'll cherry pick on his come up, but he can't really cherry pick when he wants to. Because like the UFC kind of has like this. With Dana White is kind of like a, so to say, a dictator, I guess. Well, no, he is a dictator. Like Dana White, I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes I be thinking like if I'm in the UFC and I'm fighting for fucking Dana White, I'd be like I would not want to have that fucking job. Cause he just seemed like he just be bashing the fuck out of this. He be doing some like off the wall shit sometimes. Like I don't know, cause I think like with Dana White, when you watch Dana White, if you watch Dana White, you be like, I don't think an owner should say that about somebody, especially if they work for him. But he be saying that shit. But like I think Conor McGregor wants to cherry pick, but he can't sometimes. So he lose. Like even like his first fight with Nate Diaz, he lost, and he just keeps losing. But I guess it's all about how you come back, so to say. I guess that's the good thing, right? It's about how you come back, right? So I said, you know what, I want to go to this thing because honestly, I'm personally, I wanted to see Jorge Masvidal win. I went for the underdog. I really did. I wanted the underdog to win. It's like that's like what everybody likes to see is to see the underdog win. You've lost 13 times, well 14 times, and you want to see somebody succeed. And I always felt like he never got a fair shake when he first went at it. Even if you haven't watched it, and when he first went at it with his first time, I always felt like he didn't get a fair shake. But this time he was gonna get a fair shake, and he got a fair shake and got knocked the fuck out. I mean, yeah, got his clock cleaned out real quick. It was very very subtle, right on the jaw, on the button. And like the thing about UFC, when somebody get like knocked out, they just be like laying there, and then the motherfucker just hops on top of him and starts boom, boom, boom. And like, yeah, he got one of those. It was well deserved though, cause ain't gonna lie, like it's crazy though, cause when I watched it, like I felt like he was gonna lose. I don't know, it's like different, right? It's like a certain kind of calmness. I'm telling you, like he's always been the underdog, especially when he go into fights, and the fights that he's won, he's always been the underdog. But he was fighting in his hometown. Everybody in hometown was like expecting him to win. So he may have been the underdog like on the cards, but in his hometown he wasn't the underdog. They thought he was gonna win, and I feel like that got to him a little bit, and he was just too calm out there. I mean, he was too happy and too like it was like weird, cause like I saw him and like he was just like when you like underestimate somebody, and I feel like he underestimated that motherfucker's punching power. Like, but I don't know how you underestimate somebody's punching power when like the last of his fights he's been knocking out people. But whatever. And I always thought it's like I mean like I know you've always heard this saying like you don't play around with the fight game because something happened. But he was playing around too much and he got hit on the fucking button, and it was necessary. He got beat the fuck up. It hurt. I ain't gonna lie. Like it hurt seeing that shit. But I don't know. It's weird. I don't like. I wanted to see him win, but he didn't. And I was a little messed up about it. I was a little mad because I'm like, damn, I thought he was gonna win, but he didn't. I mean, it happens. I didn't lose. He was a good sport. That's always good to see a good sport after a loss. Because in this whole game we do, it's all about wins and losses. I'm saying we do like I'm a fighter. I'm not no fucking fighter. You know, I just love it. You know, I just love the fight game. You know, I just love it. I'm not no fucking fighter, but like watching that shit, it was a good round. It was a good card. I didn't pay for it. You know, shout out to me. But it was a really good card because you had like 3 championship fights. You had and I think what all the 3 championship fights they all got finished. It was nothing too long. Like Rose Namajunas knocked out her fighter in fucking like what within 3 minutes. Fucking Valachenko, she kind of like just dominated her opponent, and then Jorge Masvidal got knocked out by Kamaru Usman. And I know I should have been going for Kamaru Usman, but I just something about Kamaru Usman I just don't like. I really didn't think he was just. I didn't. I still don't like him now because I just feel like with him maybe maybe it's the person I got to see that I don't like is his persona. Maybe I don't like his persona. Maybe I got to see him a little bit more. But there's something about him, like the way he talks. I just don't. I don't believe in that shit he be saying. It don't feel authentic. Sometimes with fighters, like a lot of people when they do things they do shit to promote. Like nobody's really that person. Like it's crazy. Like when you watch Mike Tyson talk, that motherfucker really was that person. Muhammad Ali, fucking Floyd, all the fucking great fighters, they're really that person that they say is. And I felt like with Kamaru Usman, his record proves, he's done well. But I just never really, I don't believe in what he be saying. Like, and especially if you're not like a trash talker, don't talk trash. It's like the same shit like when people like didn't like John Jones, because like whenever John Jones used to trash talk, they be like, come on man, you talk about God and then you trash talk, we don't really like that. So it's like people get that weird vibe, but they don't like John Jones as a person like that. But John Jones has proved himself. John Jones is a goat. Motherfucker can't be beat. Like I was watching it was Francis Ngannou. He was a heavyweight champion, and the heavyweight champion, he was talking about fighting John Jones, and everybody talks about John Jones's last couple of fights and stuff like that. And they was talking to Mike Tyson. I'm a big fan of Mike Tyson, and they was talking to Mike Tyson, and they was talking about his last couple of fights, and like he hasn't really looked good. And Mike Tyson said, you don't look at those fights because let's be honest, who was he fighting at the time? Sometimes it's hard to get up with somebody you don't really know. Like, and that's as a champion, it's crazy. As a champion, you have to get up for every fight. You can be just chilling, like you beating the best of the best, and every single time it's always gonna be a challenger, and you have to get up every single time. That shit is tough. That shit is tough. Having to get up every single time for the fight, like especially like you just probably like what, you probably had like a bad training camp, probably got an injury, but that motherfucker there is finna come in to fucking take your fucking head off. That's why you gotta commend John Jones. Motherfucker, he has to deal with that shit all the time. I think he has like at least like 14 title defenses and hasn't lost one. I mean, he had one close fight, one really close fight, other than his last two. And that one close fight was against Gustafsson. I watched that fight like over and over again. I still think Gustafsson won, but John Jones didn't back down because Gustafsson was laying it on him. And I mean, like watching that shit is like good, but he says don't look at that because it's hard to get up for that. And then I go, okay. So if John Jones goes and fight Francis Ngannou, that's gonna be the good one. But I think they're gonna do the Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou, which I know this is heavy like UFC, but it just happened, So, but yeah, they're gonna do the Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou, and that's gonna be exciting. I think Derek Lewis is gonna win because Derek Lewis is from Houston, and Derek Lewis scared Francis Ngannou when they first fought. Like Francis Ngannou was actually scared of Derek Lewis. He did not want to trade. I guess he just felt Derek Lewis's power, and he was like, you know what, fuck that shit. I'm gonna just stay on the outside. But Francis Ngannou got power, but it's like difference. I'm telling you, like that Teddy Atlas quote speaks when he says, when you're not the guy that you say that you are, you have a great job of noticing who is that guy. And that's I think when he was in that motherfucking ring looking across from him, he was able to see who the fuck that motherfucker was. Like, we talk about heavy hands. Derek Lewis ain't no motherfucking in shape ass dude. He's like a little out of shape guy. Well, he ain't no little, he's like 6'4". He's some out of shape guy, but it's just every single time he fights is, destruction. And like, you don't see fights go to the decision with Derek Lewis. Like, it's either destruction or it's not. And like when you watch shit like that, you're like, okay, it's destruction or not. Either you're gonna get destroyed. I'm not finna fucking technically fight you. I'm finna swing my heart out against you. You know. And I think when he was looking across the cage, he looked at that man like, you know what? I think it's true. I think it's true what they say it was. And that had to be the worst fight of ever in the UFC because it was so fucking. That was a snooze fest. That was a fucking snooze fest watching that shit. But you know, that's just how it is though. It was good. I mean, it was a snooze fest, but I think this next fight, they've grown so much as fighters, so it's gonna be a good thing to see. Like honestly, I can't wait to see that shit. It's gonna be good. I get excited like watching like some good fights and stuff like that. And you know what? So like, all right, so I'm gonna go. All right, so we're gonna talk about other sports, right? Because you know, some of the greatest sports athletes, you know, they don't always make it, you know, into whatever profession that they want to, you know, be in. So you know what's a good viable option for them to go for? It's WWE or WWF. Fuck the WWE. I mean, actually, WWE is so fucking trash. Like when I was coming up as a kid, like WWE was just the shit. Like it was actually cool to watch WWE. Like you know, WWE used to have like fucking sold out shows full of grown men and women. Sold out shows like with like you know Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, you know, all you know all the greats, Mick Foley, Undertaker, you know all the greats. And then, but WWE's been going on for like years. Like I think like what since like the 50s, 60s. You know, you had wrestlers like they was selling out the Madison Square Garden in the 60s with Bruno Sammartino and shit like that, and selling it out like with like no promotion and shit like that. They just sell it out, and then people. But and I don't know if there was like it was fake, obviously, but they're selling out to watch a fake show. I didn't. It's crazy how big WWE is because it's like it's kind of like you gotta think about this for a second, right? You can do this shit in your backyard, but they got people just and it's just a little squared ring, and they you know fake fighting, choreographed fights, and people are watching that shit. It's like watching a movie, you know, with you know with all this acting and stuff like that. But it was so big, like back in the day, it was like the biggest shit ever. Like in 2000, like when The Rock was big and shit like that. The Rock, Stone Cold, you know. I keep saying that those two because those are the fucking greats, you know. You know, two legends. You know, my favorite wrestler was Goldberg. I used to love Goldberg. It used to be really really cool back then. You know, now it's not no more. Like I would never watch it. I don't like talking about me. In fact, I don't really like mentioning the fact that I used to like that shit. But I do like I did used to like it. But it's crazy though to see because like I remember back in the day they used to have this little thing. I just watched this nifty little documentary. It was very heartwarming. It was called it was like the Dark Side of the Ring for like the brawl with for all. And like back in the day, the WWE used to have this thing where they used to like fucking. I don't know what the fuck went through these niggas' minds. I don't know what made them do this shit. But they had the brawl for all, and it was like fighting. They was like actually fighting. Just fighting for some money. Like standing up, you stand in the ring, I look across you, and we fight for money. These ain't trained fighters. They don't fight. They act like they fight, but they don't fight. And they have to actually fight. And like, it's so like looking at it from the outside looking in, it looks good because like, oh, if they're faking it, this is amazing. But they wasn't faking it. These motherfuckers is really knocking each other out. Like really fighting and like giving motherfuckers concussions and shit, breaking ribs, like real life shit. They motherfucker like it was one knockout. I think the Godfather got knocked out one time, and he was just sitting there like he was like he laid there and like when he got knocked out, his head bashed against the ring, and he was just sitting there laying there, right? And like it just looks so sad because like one thing that looks sad about it is when you got to scrape somebody up off the fucking floor. You go, and you see it in their eyes that they was out. Like that's not a good shit to see sometimes. And so like fucking, he was like, so that they was just fucking fighting like that and knocking each other the fuck out. And but it was getting really fucking hurt. Like it was fucking up each other. Like, and it was like weird, like where it destroyed friendships. And like it's so funny because they had that shit because they wanted a particular somebody to win. But the person that they wanted to win didn't fucking win. It's like having a fucking Like, you know how all the some basketball players, they be acting like they hard and shit like that, and like you have like all the hardest basketball players, but out of nowhere, motherfucking Lou Williams wins the fucking fight between everybody against LeBron James, knocking out LeBron James, knocking out famous talent and shit like that. The person that they wanted to win didn't end up winning. And I think what they did with that, with the motherfucker who won, which I think his name was Bart Gunn. He had won. This is back in like 2000, right? Like early 2000, like probably like late 90s. The Bart Gunn had won, and when Bart Gunn had won, they said, you know what? Okay, you beat everybody else. Now it's time for you to fight Butterbean. And if y'all guys don't know who Butterbean is, Butterbean was like a fucking 400-pound boxer who only fought exhibition fights. So he only fought 4-round fights because he was 400 pounds. But that motherfucker had dynamite, knocking out everybody he fought. You know, he lost some, but he knocked out damn near everybody he fought. And so he's a boxer, but he's actually a boxer, but you know, he only can go 4 rounds because he's fucking 400 pounds. I don't think he knew what cardio was or a diet. I don't think he knew what that was either. So it's like they had a untrained fighter fight Butterbean, like in the boxing ring, or in the fucking wrestling ring, and this motherfucking Butterbean knocked him the fuck out. Like Butterbean even said, he says, I hope he don't get up, cause I'm gonna feel bad. It's gonna be bad for him. And so he knocks him down one time, and he gets up, and Butterbean comes over there and just punches him one fucking time in his face and knocks him out. Like it's just bad because like the setup on this shit was so fucking terrible. Where they had motherfucking they didn't have like professionals do that shit. They had like people from the streets that don't know how to fucking judge boxing matches. They had referees that don't know how to fucking judge a referee match. Don't know how to really referee. They don't. It's like they didn't do this shit properly. They didn't have medical people on the team. So people getting knocked out, it's like throw some water on him, put his legs up, he'll be good. They don't know what the fuck they doing. So motherfuckers really getting fucked up. But like it's crazy as a kid. You don't pay attention to shit like that. I'm telling you, you don't never really look at like, oh, I wonder what the fuck's happening right there. Nah, they motherfuckers was getting fucked up. And so like after like fucking like looking at the shit, I was like, okay. I didn't know that this shit was real, and all that shit was like fucking. They was really getting fucked up, like where motherfuckers like losing their careers and shit. Like motherfuckers' wives being mad at them for fucking doing that shit. There's a motherfucker who was talking. I think he's like paralyzed, some shit like that, like really fucked up. And it's like crazy to see that shit. I was like, oh my fucking god, because I never knew the fucking injuries that came with it. Never knew any of the fucking injuries. It's a really good documentary though. Go check it out. Check it out. If you want to like laugh, or if you ever was like a fan of WWE just to watch that shit, it's something crazy to see. Honestly, it really is. And like after watching that documentary, I'm like, okay. But then I realized, like, with WWE, like WWE's injuries are worse than motherfucking some veterans or fucking NFL players, NFL basketball players, motherfuckers who can't walk right. WWE injuries are the worst. Like, you ever see the motherfucker with the fucking all the scratches on their fucking forehead? Like, it's a bunch of motherfuckers like with like every like old school wrestler, they got like fucking looking like they've been scratching their fucking head with a fucking butter knife, they forehead, because they used to have to make themselves bleed and shit. Cause that's just how the fight was, with the wrestling. Wrestlers' injuries are the fucking worst. Like it's crazy to see. Like some of the motherfuckers be like I think like Mick Foley can't even fold his fucking arm. Like one of his arms, like he has to keep an arm like specifically like this, and like he's been messed up. He can't even put on his own shoes, can't even put on his own socks because of wrestling. You make money off of it, but it's like that gladiator shit where you just sacrificing yourself for the love of the sport. And if you love something like that, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. I mean, I understand why people don't fucking. It's crazy. Like I understand why people don't do that shit. And now as safe as it ever, people still do it now. It's still bad now. Like cause you know how like when in the NFL they never really talked about CTE and shit like that. Never. Like especially in like early stages, they never talked about CTE. Not even a little bit. Like it was crazy. Like after watching that fucking documentary, or not, well, not the documentary, the movie Concussion. Like I literally was like really really mad at watching the NFL. Like I low key was like I can't believe this shit was going on. With like people like how they had the document, how they had the, it's not a documentary, how they had the movie set up. I don't know. It just made you not like the NFL. I already didn't like Roger Goodell. He just got this face where I just don't like. I don't know. He just got this look where he's just like, I don't like Roger Goodell. He looks like he's just not a good person to be around. But after watching that documentary, it made me really not like Roger Goodell. Because it was like certain things. I think they was trying to talk to him about the shit, but he didn't want to do it because it's a money thing. People were like losing their lives and shit, and he was trying to tell them like I think it's because the head is not meant to be head and shit like that. But some of they fucking injuries aren't as nearly as fucking bad as fucking the WWE injuries. Like motherfuckers be having a neck, like they fucking neck hit, hinged up and shit like that. They gotta put that shit back in place and do that shit again next week. And then they're doing like other shows, they gotta do that shit again next week. Like let's say fucking like if your finishing move is like the fucking jump off the top rope and do a triple backflip and land on somebody, you gotta do that shit every fucking day. And let's say you want to like do like a high spot, which I think high spots are like called when you go all the way up on top of a fucking ladder, and you gotta do some shit like that. You gotta do that shit and land. There ain't no fucking false landers in that motherfucker. You gotta land on something. That shit don't feel good. And I'm like, oh hell no. And as a kid, we used to fucking do this shit and think that shit was real. Like I used to always wonder, like when motherfuckers used to get punched, how come they never felt? I used to think wrestling was so real. Like I never understood how when you punch somebody and nobody fell, like what happened? Like, or why didn't they block it? And like, or why when somebody got knocked out, how come you didn't get up and do the Hulk Hogan hand? Like, I'm right here, brother. Like I never understood why I never seen that shit. Because I found out wrestling wasn't real. And when they told me wrestling wasn't real as a kid, I didn't believe them. I really thought wrestling was real. How dumb of me as a kid. Like I didn't. What kind of stupid shit is that? You stupid as fuck for that. Like I believe wrestling was real. But then again, I also believe Santa Claus is real. I think I did. I don't know. I think I just like what it said. I think I like the movies more, But motherfuckers, like, you gotta do that shit every fucking day. And like with football, you can do it like once a week, plus practice and shit like that. Actually, I don't even know. I don't know. They probably do it as much. But I know wrestling's injuries is like just it's the fucking worst. Like looking at all the other fucking wrestlers, like some of these motherfuckers are fucked up. Actually, like the old school are fucked up. Ric Flair's fucked up. Fucking Hulk Hogan was 6'7". He's 6'4" now because his fucking back and spine has been had to get fused together because of how many times he does a leg drop. That's not funny. That's not funny, but it's the truth. He's fucked up. Wrestling injuries ain't no fucking joke. Like these motherfucking wrestlers they risk their lives for this shit, and they get fucked up. And hey, if I love something that much, I do it to them. I wouldn't give a fuck about the product, because that's something. When you fall in love with something, it's hard to get the fuck away from something. When you fall in love, especially when you love your craft and you love doing it, it's hard to get away from that. So I understand why they go through it. Like if they're like, I'm glad comedy isn't like that. I'm glad I'm not getting a fucking broken neck for this shit like that off of comedy. But if that was the case and I fell in love with comedy, I wouldn't be surprised if that was me doing it. I'll be doing that shit. But when you love something, it's hard for you to get rid of it. That's for real. Especially if you love your craft. So that's the best part about it. Motherfuckers got knocked out for their craft, and they'll do it again. That's also like the process of when they motherfuckers going to fighting and shit like that. You gotta get knocked out. You win some, you lose some in this game. You should be able to relate that to anything. It's But being a WWE star and getting knocked out is not something that's usually that you want to see. Just get fucked up, supporting. That's just that brawl for all shit was like crazy. And the worst part about it is like Vince McMahon didn't give a fuck. That's how you knew WWF was gonna be as big as fuck, because Vince McMahon didn't give a fuck. He did anything he can to get a rise out of people, any current topic, he did. He got on that shit, and he was like able to like try to make as much money off of it. Like I don't know if you noticed, but Vince McMahon has said the N word before to some. He said the N word before, like to like John Cena. Like you should in front of Booker T. Like you know what kind of job that gotta be for you to have your boss on national fucking TV, pay-per-view TV, to be like, "What's up, my nigga?" And Booker T just sitting there watching. That's just some shit where you like, God damn, I feel like I'm letting people down with this one. As a black man, you don't never want to let people down, but yeah, I feel like I'm not really doing this my people a service on that one, you know. But Booker T done said the N word before. He has one of the best fucking sound bites ever. But yeah, Vince McMahon was going just willing to do anything. Like I don't know if you noticed, like back in the day, like they had this one Indian fighter. You know, well they had a bunch of fucking Indian fighters. I'm saying Indian or Arabic. You know, I'm like, you know what, Middle Eastern fighter. And one of the Middle Eastern fighters, I'm like fucking, he used to have to wear a turban. And Patricia Neal was telling the story to fucking Triple H. He used to have to wear a turban, and he like. Could he asked Vince McMahon, can I stop wearing a turban? If I'm really like, you know, letting my family down with this shit, like my culture and shit like that. They don't like when I wear the turban. They say I'm disgracing them. And Vince McMahon says, I don't give a shit. You're gonna wear the turban. And that's what he had to wear the fucking turban because you got, you know, when you're in that position, you just do what Vince says. You just do what Vince says. And I'm like, what the but Vince McMahon just didn't give a fuck about that shit. Like, it was another one when, this motherfucking one Arabic guy was wrestling the fucking, the Undertaker. And he was, like, losing. So he got on his knees and did, like, some fucking prayer. This is fucking terrible. He got on his knees and did some fucking prayer. And, like, when he did this prayer, like, motherfuckers, like, I don't know if you ever watched, like, an old school beheading video where the motherfuckers will wear all blacks. It had people wearing all that shit come out there and just start beating the fuck out of the Undertaker. And they carried him off like he was some fucking deity. Some god. Something that, you know, people, he's like he's been revered. And I'm like, yo, this motherfucker, WWE didn't give, WWF, they didn't give a fuck at that time. Vince McMahon didn't give a shit. Anything he could do to pop off, he was gonna pop off. They had like certain angles, like they had a rape angle with Kurt Angle. Like a rape angle with Kurt Angle. Well, Kurt Angle was just on some rapey shit. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, we used to watch this shit as a kid. And we used to root for, like, people who... I used to root for that shit. Like, I'm thinking about this shit as a kid. Like, that's what I used to watch. Like, I used to be like, oh, shit. I can't believe this shit. But, like, I mean, it just grabbed your attention. They're going to do anything to, you know, to pop off. Like, I actually believe that they killed people. Like, it was one guy with, like, cement. They had a cement match where they fucking put cement in a glass and they motherfucking closed in on. I thought he just died. It's crazy. They had one where they thought Vince McMahon died because he had fucking the truck had blew up, and like he had to actually cancel that shit because fucking Eddie Guerrero had died. Chris Benoit had passed away. Well, no, not passed away. Chris Benoit had killed everybody, including himself, and they had to cancel that scene because of that happened. Because they had to go into like real life shit because that happened, and they thought they didn't know the particular situation of the Chris Benoit situation, you know, which is a documentary on that one too if you ever, you know, was interested in Chris Benoit. And if you don't know what Chris Benoit's situation was that wrestler who he was a wrestler and he killed his wife, and he killed his kid, and he killed himself. And then, you know, they chalked it up as it being CTE. So to say, you know, CTE, you know, they said they examined his brain. They said he had a brain of an 80-year-old man, you know, and that's the reason why he killed his wife, you know. But me, I personally, you know, I don't believe that. I you know, it's a lot of wrestlers that fucking was like fucking did some other shit who've gotten hit in the head more than once. He's the only one that's just that. You the only one that killed his wife. His brain could have been that fucked up, but what it could have been was probably like the roids and probably fucking drugs and him actually being fucking crazy. It's one thing when people talk about, because the thing about it, All these motherfuckers is just big as hell. They all done took steroids. They all are on steroids. Steroids is a fucking prominent factor. Like Vince McMahon actually have gotten sued because of that shit. Because they said you got to stop giving these guys steroids because it's just all these fucking roided up motherfuckers. It's like angry. You know, steroids, you know, produces anger and shit like that. That's a lot of shit when it comes, especially when you're doing shit like that. And that could be the case of why he was probably snapping out. He couldn't control his anger. You know? And it's weird too, cause like when he did that, like fucking WWE just said, "Oh, we don't know you." They took his name off everything. Anything that even mentioned, they took his name off. Like you actually get in trouble if you mention his name. Like they don't play that shit, cause you know that situation. It's not really something that, like, you know. Here's the thing. It's weird because it's like, you know, a lot of people know him because of, you know, what he's done in the ring and shit like that. But it's like what he's done. It's kind of like hard to be like, you know. I mean, he killed like a 3-year-old kid, and he killed his wife, and he killed himself. What can you really, like look at somebody in a good light? But like WWE like stepped away to the point where like they don't even like acknowledge him. Like fucking, I think they cut him off like money wise. Like they don't even get paid for him. And this is just, it's weird. That's a tricky situation. That really is tricky because, and that's not to mention like with that whole situation. That's a whole fucked up situation. And you know that's why fucking that Chris Benoit situation was like so big, because the after effects because they was gonna, because like, you know what's crazy is like probably like what 6 months before Eddie Guerrero had passed away, and he died because of heart damage, of heart failure, you know, which also all that he took steroids too. I mean, they all took steroids, and like fucking his heart failed on him, and when he died, he fucking and then let's not to mention, I forgot to mention, like, you know, a lot of these wrestlers, you know, get addicted to pain pills and shit like that because, you know, because they fucking injuries. And if you know anybody that talks about addiction and stuff like that, especially if they're addicted to pain pills, they say that shit's the worst. Because, you know, I mean, other than, you know, crack and, you know, heroin and shit like that, but pain pills is just up there. And weed, but can you get addicted to weed? I think so. But like, yeah, they said that shit is the worst, and like that's not to mention, so his heart failed on him. They did like a whole tribute show, and it was very, very sad. I watched that shit as a kid. Like, it was sad to see like them doing a whole tribute show for Eddie Murphy. It was sad to see a tribute show for Eddie Murphy. Nah, Eddie Guerrero, and everybody was sad. You know, they actually completely like broke the fourth wall, because I thought everybody was like, you know, because Eddie Murphy at the time, he was playing a heel character, and fucking, you know, he was really a really good heel. But like everybody who was supposed to be mad at him like was just crying and shit like that. And like you want to hear something very, very crazy, is like Chris Benoit and Eddie Murphy. Stop saying Eddie Murphy. Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero were like very, very close friends. And there's a video out on YouTube where Chris Benoit was like crying, man, so hard because Eddie Guerrero died. And like watching that video, you go, damn, that's a hurt man. And like, you know, looking at that, his Eddie Guerrero died, and then like I think like a couple of weeks after that, his fucking mentor, his long mentor, which I don't know who the fuck his mentor was, died too. And I guess everything just fucking collapsed when, you know, I don't know. I'm not justifying that shit, and I don't think I should, but that happened, you know. So that whole Chris, I don't even know where the fuck I was going with that shit, but that whole Chris Benoit situation was fucked up. It was fucked up. And I ain't gonna lie, that's when I stopped watching WWE. Like, along that situation, that's kind of like, and it's not because of that situation. I think at that time, I kind of like, I started getting into girls, and I kind of realized, oh yeah, this WWE shit is fucking, I don't give a fuck about none of this shit now. You know, I started realizing that women are pretty. Yeah, I didn't give a fuck about WWE after that. You know, but, you know, as a kid, you can't help what you like that shit. It's crazy to think that, like, we used to watch, that used to be on like national TV, watching that shit. Like, everybody used to watch that. Motherfuckers like that. And it'd be packed. Like, it's crazy to, like, as packed. They be like selling out like stadiums just to watch choreographed wrestling. That's just nuts. Like it was bigger than boxing. WWE was bigger than boxing. It was just as big as football. They selling out football stadiums. Well, it was selling out football stadiums just to watch motherfuckers wrestle. I thought that shit was fucking nuts. You know, I guess I'm a little tuckered out on talking about wrestling. Obviously, I guess I could just end this episode this way. I guess heavily wrestling influenced on this episode. You know, shout out to wrestling. You know, it's not the same no more. That shit sucks. I think it just sucks because it's like PG. Like that PG shit is like terrible. Like when you cater to his kids, it's never fun. Like who likes to watch a fucking PG-13 movie? I don't know not one good PG-13 movie. Okay, I know a couple, but I mean, a couple versus fuck them kids. Especially with like when I want to be entertained, fuck them kids. I really just want to watch this shit because if you're trying to entertain me, that's what you should be entertaining. Like it's crazy like when motherfuckers be complaining about certain things, like that was really like if somebody ever like complains about like what fucking something that fucking like one of the old school comedians probably said back in the day, they probably be like fucking that was very fucked up, it was very bashing, but like fuck y'all. This because if you didn't enjoy it, it wasn't for you. It wasn't for you. Maybe that just wasn't your cup of tea. Shout out to Britain or London, same thing. Maybe it just wasn't your cup of tea. You got to figure that out. If you don't like something, you just don't like it. Sometimes it can be done out of taste, out of distaste, but most times it's not. Most times you just be in your bitch ass feelings, and you got to just get out your bitch ass feelings. Like, get up out your bitch ass feelings. Like niggas be in a bitch ass feelings. Like, why are you in your bitch ass feelings? Like, we don't have time for like motherfuckers to be in a bitch ass feelings. And I know it's 2021, and you want men to be more open emotionally, but sometimes you just be in your bitch ass feelings. Like when motherfuckers talk to me, sometimes when sometimes people be talking to me and they be like really emotional, and it's like they be emotional about bullshit. In my mind, I go like, yo, for real, like get out your bitch ass feelings. But then again, you can't never come out and say that. You can't, because if you come out and say that shit, that's just, why would you even say that to me? But in my head, this is all in my head, and it's on the podcast now. But like, in my head, I go, yeah, get out your motherfucking bitch ass feelings. All right, well, I can end it right here. Hey, I'll be back next week. You know what it is.